this model shows us is how that transition goes from shock and awe of change to eventual acceptance of that change and acceptance of the organization's new policies. So maybe asking yourself, well, what is it? Where did this creation come about? Where did this model come about? Well, it was created by the Swiss American psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969. And basically, it's got five key stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And of course, on here we see those. We see shock and denial. We see anger. We see depression, experiment, decision, and integration. And in each one of these steps, we see how the organization itself goes and how the employee itself will deal with these stages, moving to eventual acceptance of the change that's being brought on. And this is all an emotional transparency of how they're dealing with it. So we have when it first pops out, they're angry, they're upset, they're like, wow, why are we changing things? This can't happen. Then it leads into anger of why are we changing these things? It doesn't make any sense. Depression, feeling that, you know, the way the culture has been, the way that the culture of this organization is no longer going to be the same way. So there's that mixture of anger and depression as you're seeing they're going down. But then when the new modes of change and development are implemented, and the organizational developers and the leaders of the organization start implementing those engagement methods and those new tactics to build up an organization, we kind of see a then curve. People are getting more excited, and we see an uptick in the engagement, uptick in the emotional feeling of the student. And then comes into the decision making. Okay, how are we doing? Is this working? And then finally, integration. And that's basically the final step of integration or assimilation is basically, or acceptance, is understanding, okay, this is where we're at. How did this work? How did this achieve what we wanted it to achieve within the bounds and the boundaries of the organization? My rationale for selecting this is because as everybody is going through organizations and everyone's working in jobs or part of an organization or just part of anything, there's bound to be emotional tie-in to everything. Leadership changes, policy changes. Everything we do, there's something changes. I mean, even if you go to Starbucks and they stopped selling the pumpkin spice lattes, it does affect how emotionally people operate. But when organizations do that, there's always a backspace. Okay, we're going to take this away, but we're going to try this new thing out and see how this works. And so it works not just on an employee level basis, but it also works with a community basis, a shareholder basis. It works with anybody that has any dealings with that organization to see ultimately how this function works. And so it is all based off of communication. You have to be able to communicate effectively what your purpose of all this is. Because as you can see, the chart, the graph starts at a particularly high level. And so this portion here is the productivity and engagement. So as productivity and engagement rises, and this bar here represents time. Down at the bottom represents time. So up and down is productivity and engagement. Left to right is time going this way. So as we can see, as time moves forward and engagement moves up, we're beginning to see an uptick. Okay, an uptick eventually here at the end with integration on how the new policies are set and make progress in the organization. Here's a better method and a model of it. So morale and competence here, productivity and engagement, and then time. So as we can see here, surprise at the event, the shock value. This is when their first notice of the change is going to happen. Disbelief, looking at the evidence that isn't true. Frustration, recognition that things are different, sometimes angry. This is the new policies. These are like, okay, well, we're going to implement this. Depression or experiment, low mood, lacking energy. There's something new. They're not really engaged in this. They don't really want to do this. Experiment, this is the initial engagement with the new situation. So this is where in the experiment phase, we're trying out those new policies, those new engagement techniques, those new organizational changes that drive the organization forward. And then the decision, learning how to work in the new situation, feeling more positive. So it's about, at this point, it's about bridging the old culture that worked and the new culture that worked in the experiment and building that all together. And then finally, we have the integrated system, integration, changes integrated in a renewed individual. So now we have a new individual that sees the power, the progress of what they're doing, and their engagement is beyond scale. It's off the charts. It's up there because now they're engaged in an organization that has taken a different pathway, a different chart, and is moving forward in what they're looking to do. So that's what that crucially is about. And so that we talked about the different steps. So we identify the change, we look at the details, the approach of how we do it, we implement those details, and then we monitor them. We understand and monitor, okay, how are they working? How is the change that we wanted to do in the beginning, how's that working? Are we effectively making our organization better? Are we changing things for the better? Are we moving the process forward? How is this all working? And once we were able to do that within an organization, and what this chart shows us is not just an organization wide, but as a person, employee basic wise, is it working for this employee? Is it working for that employee? The thing I like so much about this model is that it is so specific to the individual and that each individual can be tailored to this model. So instead of saying, this is how this model was used just on an organization level, but we also took it to a department level. We also took it to an individual employee level. It's a model that can be used throughout the organization at many different levels, at many different areas to charter and to grow the same exact thing. The overwhelming development of the goals that were set out from the beginning. And um so that's honestly why I chose the Kubler Ross change curve method model, is because it does exactly that. It helps to apply the stages to not just an individual level, but to an organization level. And it's something that organizations can use constantly throughout um that whole situation. You get different responses from different employees because they'll adapt differently. And then you can curtail these individuals to the method, to the model. You can see, okay, this worked for this person, but didn't work for this person. Because every individual is different. When we talk about engagement, everybody engages in things differently. To some students, there's some employees or students, employees, individuals, organizations, whose members are more hands-on versus those that are more visual learners. You're able to implement that and also to learn more about the individual themselves. So it just goes to show that overall, the method of the organization can be built strongly off this method and of the person itself. So that is the purpose and the reason for me choosing um, for this model. And I hope that you all will take this into consideration as you move forward into uh, models that you've chosen into organization changes in your own policy, in your own organization, because I know I'm going to take